moving on to chapter 4 of the book, which is titled Becoming Conscious While Dreaming, aka classic lucid dreaming stuff. And I guess more specifically for all of us already in the lucid dreaming community, what we would be calling DILDs or dream-induced lucid dreams. So for this first video here, we'll just jump around to a bunch of different parts of his beginning part of the chapter, and then we'll move on to the techniques next. So for starters, if a practitioner becomes aware of a dream while in it, usually accompanied by a clear realization that this is just a dream, then the phase is experienced from that moment forward. Now this next one here is kind of interesting. So contrary to popular opinion, having a phase experience through dreaming differs little from other techniques, once you get into the phase. So whether that be direct techniques or indirect techniques, or I guess more specifically like the astral projection side of things or OBE side of things, where, at least for me, that lines up with exactly how I see things and how I think most people in the lucid dreaming community see things, where, most of us tend to see like astral projections and OBEs as basically being the same thing as a lucid dream. Although I definitely think we're in the minority here, where people just straight up in the astral projection community or straight up in the OBE community, most of them do see lucid dreams as being something different and separate. And then you just take the general population out there who's not really into any of this stuff. They'll just look at it, and because they're named different things, right? Lucid dreaming, astral projection, OBEs, they probably just assume that they're all different stuff, even though, in my opinion, and I know some of the people who watch my channel a lot will disagree with me on this, which is totally fine. But yeah, I see them as all basically being in your head and, essentially lucid dreams. What it means to be fully conscious while dreaming. So consciousness while dreaming is always present to some extent, but it is necessary to be as conscious as one would be in a wakeful state. And that kind of lines up with how I've seen things, at least once I really got into the lucid dreaming practice, where to me, if you have extremely good dream recall, or, really any dream recall, to some extent, I think you got to have at least some level of conscious awareness in there just to remember that stuff and bring it out with you to the waking state. Now, that does not mean I would consider, if I have just really excellent dream recall but didn't actually know I was dreaming in the moment, I would not be considering those lucid dreams. But I do think you got to have some level of conscious awareness there just to kind of remember that stuff and bring it out with you to the waking state. Next up, interesting fact. Even if a practitioner pays no heed to the techniques for becoming conscious while dreaming, but applies direct or indirect techniques, on average, each third phase will still occur through becoming conscious in a dream. Next up, technique-related elements are performed outside of when conscious while dreaming occurs. Technique-related elements are performed outside of when conscious while dreaming occurs. I think that's written a little weird, but I think you get the point, because whenever you are doing your, classic lucid dreaming stuff, like doing your reality checks, all of that stuff is done, when you're totally wide awake and, not like the indirect techniques, not after waking as you're cycling through your stuff. This is all done beforehand. These techniques promise a much higher likelihood of success than direct techniques and can be compared with indirect techniques, inferior to the latter only in terms of the speed at which results are achieved and the amount of effort required. And so I see where he's coming from of that, where, I take it where he's saying like doing classic reality check stuff in your waking state is more effort required than doing like these cycling techniques upon awakening. But I can kind of see how it could be the opposite of that, because at least, when you're doing these like reality checks when you're wide awake and stuff like that, that is done separate from sleep. So once you are asleep, then you just gotta not really do anything. All you gotta do at that point is hopefully realize that things are weird in the dreaming state and realize that you're dreaming, and then when you're in there, you might do a reality check or something to prove to yourself that you are indeed, in the phase or in a dream state. But, I could see how that might be seen as being less effort than having to actually wake up and remember to do your cycling techniques with the indirect method. And then we'll close it out with this: the best time to practice becoming conscious while dreaming, where the most ideal time, surprise to nobody if you're into this stuff, is going to be classic wake back to bed stuff, or his whole deferred method thing, where you sleep, about 6 hours or so, wake up, stay awake for 30 to 50 minutes, and then go back to sleep. He does bring up an interesting point here. So the longer the interlude before going back to sleep, the higher the odds of success. And then he also comments how conscious while dreaming also arises during daytime naps, and it can also arise in the middle of the night without doing any wake back to bed, anything. And so we'll wrap it up there, and we'll be moving on to the techniques next. And until the next video, keep your phase practice legit.